The words hit me like a slap across the face, even though his hand never moved. We were standing in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made him breakfast every morning for 12 years, and my husband looked at me with genuine contempt in his eyes. "You're nothing without me, Claire, absolutely nothing. You have no education, no skills, no money of your own. If I left you tomorrow, you'd be homeless within a month." I was holding a dish towel, frozen mid-wipe on a plate that cost more than my first car. The plate didn't even belong to me. Nothing in this house belonged to me. Everything was in Richard's name. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, the investments. Even my credit cards were connected to his accounts. "I just asked if I could take an online course," I said quietly. "Just a web design class. It's only $200. $200 of MY money for another one of your little hobbies that you'll quit in 3 weeks. Richard loosened his tie and poured himself scotch from the crystal decanter on the counter. "Remember the photography phase, the jewelry making, the book club you couldn't even commit to. You're 34 years old, Claire, and you've never finished anything in your life except high school. Barely." That last part wasn't fair. I'd graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA. I'd had a scholarship to community college. But then I met Richard at my job waitressing, and he was sophisticated and successful and 10 years older, and he made me feel like I was special, like I didn't need college because I had him. We got married 6 months after we met. I was 19. He was 29 and already a junior partner at his father's law firm. "You're right," I heard myself say. "I'm sorry for asking." Richard's face softened slightly. He walked over and kissed my forehead like I was a child who'd finally understood a difficult concept. "I'm not trying to be mean, sweetheart. I'm trying to protect you from wasting time and money on things you won't follow through on. You're not built for work. You're built to be taken care of. That's not a bad thing." He left for his home office, and I stood there holding that expensive plate, and something inside me cracked. Not broke, just cracked. A tiny fissure in whatever foundation had been holding up my life for the past 12 years. I set the plate down carefully and walked to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked for the first time in months. When had I stopped recognizing myself? My hair was the color Richard preferred, cut in the style he liked. My clothes were the brands he approved of. Even my weight was monitored. He'd bought me a scale and put it prominently in the bathroom with a note that said, "Let's keep you healthy, baby." I was a paper doll he'd dressed up and positioned exactly how he wanted. That night after Richard fell asleep, I took his laptop and opened an incognito browser. I started researching divorce laws in our state, what happened to wives with no income in divorces, asset division, alimony. I read for 3 hours, barely breathing, terrified he'd wake up and catch me. What I learned made my stomach drop. We lived in a state where adultery mattered, where prenups held up in court if they were properly executed. I'd signed a prenup the week before our wedding. Richard's father had insisted. I barely remembered what it said, just that Richard assured me it was standard and I'd be taken care of no matter what. I found the prenup the next day in Richard's filing cabinet while he was at work. Reading it made me feel physically sick. In the event of divorce initiated by me, I was entitled to exactly $50,000 total. No alimony, no share of the house or his retirement accounts or his investment portfolio. Just $50,000 and whatever personal possessions I'd brought into the marriage. I was 19 when I married him. My personal possessions had been 2 suitcases of clothes and a laptop that died 3 years ago. If he initiated the divorce, the payout was the same, and if I was found to have committed adultery, I got nothing. Zero, not even the $50,000. I sat on the floor of his office, holding this document that had signed away any security I might have had, and I realized Richard had known exactly what he was doing. He'd locked me into a marriage where leaving meant financial ruin. I was a prisoner in a beautiful house. For the next week I went through the motions, made breakfast, cleaned the house, smiled when Richard came home. But at night, after he fell asleep, I researched. I learned about financial abuse, about coercive control, about how many women stayed in marriages because they'd been systematically cut off from any means of supporting themselves. Richard had done it so smoothly I hadn't even noticed. When we first got married and I mentioned maybe working part-time, he'd said, "Why would my wife need to work? That's embarrassing." When I brought up college, he'd said, "You don't need a degree. I make plenty of money for both of us." Every time I'd shown interest in something, a hobby, a class, a potential career, he'd subtly discouraged it, made fun of it, pointed out how I never followed through with things, created a narrative where I was incapable and he was my savior. And I'd believed him. I was folding laundry on a Tuesday afternoon when I found the receipt. It was in the pocket of Richard's pants, crumpled like he'd forgotten about it, a hotel receipt, the Meridian downtown, one night last Thursday, the night he'd said he was working late on the Henderson case. My hands shook as I smoothed it out. Room service for two, champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries. I checked his other pants, found two more receipts, different hotels, same story. Richard was having an affair. The smart thing would have been to immediately document everything, hire a lawyer, use the adultery clause to get a better settlement. That's what the websites I'd been reading at night said to do. But I didn't do that. Instead, I put the receipts back exactly where I found them, and I started planning. That night at dinner, I brought up the web design class again. I was thinking about that online course. I know you said it was a waste, but I'm really bored during the day. Maybe if I learned a skill, I could help you with your firm's website or something. Richard barely looked up from his steak. We have professionals for that, Claire. I know, but I just thought. We've been through this. The answer is no. He cut another piece of meat. Besides, I need you focused on the house. We're hosting the partners' dinner next month, and I need everything perfect. You know how important this is for my career. Of course, I said, you're right. He smiled at me, the same condescending smile he always gave when I capitulated. That's my girl. I smiled back and took a sip of wine, and I thought about those hotel receipts in his pants pocket. The next morning, after Richard left for work, I went to the library. I couldn't risk using our home computer anymore. Richard was tech-savvy enough that he might check browsing history eventually. At the library, I created a new email address he didn't know about. Then I started looking for free resources, YouTube tutorials on web design, free coding courses, articles about starting businesses with no money. I spent 6 hours there that day. I told Richard I'd been at the grocery store and running errands. This became my routine. 3 days a week, I'd go to the library for 5 or 6 hours. I told Richard I'd joined a book club and was spending more time with my friend Jennifer. He didn't care. He barely listened when I talked about my day anyway. At the library, I learned HTML and CSS. I taught myself basic graphic design using free software. I studied business plans and marketing strategies. I was voracious, desperate, consuming information like it was oxygen, and I'd been suffocating. Turns out Richard was wrong about me, never finishing anything. I just had never been allowed to start something that mattered. 3 months into my secret education, I contacted a divorce lawyer through my anonymous email. Her name was Patricia Gomez, and her website said she specialized in cases involving financial abuse. We met at a coffee shop 30 minutes from my house. I paid cash. I didn't tell her my real name at first. I need to know my options, I said, sliding the prenup across the table, but I can't leave yet. I have no money, no job, nowhere to go. Patricia read the prenup, her expression getting grimmer with each page. This is brutal, but if your husband is having an affair and you can prove it, adultery clauses can be challenged, especially if we can show he created this agreement in bad faith. How long would that take? Months, maybe over a year, and it would be expensive. Do you have access to funds for legal fees? No, everything is in his name. Then we need to build you a life raft before you jump ship. Patricia leaned forward. You need your own money, your own bank account he doesn't know about. Can you work without him finding out? I don't have any job experience. I've been a housewife for 12 years. You must have some skills. Everyone does. I thought about the past 3 months. I've been teaching myself web design. How good are you? I don't know. I've only done practice projects. Patricia pulled out her phone and showed me her law firm's website. It was clunky and outdated, clearly built 10 years ago and never updated. Build me a new one. If it's good, I'll pay you. If it's great, I'll refer you to other small businesses. Deal. I stared at her. You'd take a chance on me. Honey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know a fighter when I see one. You're not here because you're giving up. You're here because you're planning your escape. She slid a business card across the table. This is my real card. Email me at that anonymous account when you have something to show me. I worked on Patricia's website every moment Richard was out of the house. I made it sleek and modern, easy to navigate, mobile-friendly. I taught myself SEO basics and incorporated them. I created a contact form that fed directly to her email. It took me 3 weeks. I sent it to Patricia on a Thursday morning, terrified she'd hate it. She called me 2 hours later. This is fantastic, better than I expected. Can you invoice me for $2,000? I almost dropped the phone. $2,000. That's below market rate for a site this good, but I'm guessing you need to keep the amount small enough that your husband won't notice if you're getting checks. I can't get checks, he reviews all the mail. Smart man, controlling but smart. I could hear her typing. Give me a Venmo or PayPal. I don't have ones. Create one, use that anonymous email. I'll send the money there and you can transfer it to a bank account. Do you have a bank account he doesn't know about? Not yet. Open one today. Go to a bank across town, use your maiden name if you can, and open an account with whatever cash you have on hand, even if it's $20. Then link it to PayPal. Can you do that? Yes, I said, and I meant it. I opened the bank account that afternoon with $47 in cash I'd been saving from grocery money. The account was in my maiden name, Claire Hoffman. I hadn't been Claire Hoffman in 12 years. Seeing that name on the debit card made me want to cry. Patricia's $2,000 hit my PayPal 3 days later. I stared at the balance on my phone, sitting in the parking lot of a Target, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Patricia referred me to 3 other small businesses. I built websites for all of them, charged $1,500 each. Within 2 months, I had $6,500 in my secret bank account. Richard never noticed. He never asked how I spent my days. As long as dinner was ready and the house was clean and I smiled when he needed me to smile, I was invisible to him. I started charging more, $2,500 per website, then $3,000. Word spread through Patricia's network. Small businesses, solo practitioners, people who needed professional websites but couldn't afford big agencies. I was good at this, really good, and people were willing to pay me for it. 6 months after finding those hotel receipts, I had $43,000 in my secret account. I'd built 22 websites. I had a portfolio and client testimonials and a reputation, all under my maiden name, all completely separate from Richard's world. I was ready to make my move, but then something happened that changed everything. Richard's father died. Edward Morrison had been a founding partner of Morrison, Blake and Associates. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, Richard inherited his father's shares in the firm. Overnight, Richard went from junior partner to one of the 3 senior partners. He also inherited $4.2 million in assets. I found out because Richard actually talked to me about it. He was too excited not to share. This changes everything, Claire, everything. We're set for life now. I can buy out Blake if I want, take full control of the firm. We can buy a bigger house, join the country club. You can finally be the wife of someone important instead of just comfortable. I smiled and congratulated him and let him open champagne, and I thought about how he'd said I could buy out Blake, I could take control. Not we, never we. Even with $4.2 million in new assets, he still saw it all as his. The funeral was massive. Richard's father had been well connected, and everyone who was anyone in the legal community came. I wore black and stood next to Richard and played the supportive wife. At the reception, a woman approached me. She was younger than me, maybe 28, beautiful in that effortless way some people are. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. You must be Claire, she said. I'm Natalie. I worked with Edward at the firm. We shook hands, and something in her expression made my stomach drop. I'm so sorry for your loss, I said automatically. And I'm sorry for yours, she said it meaningfully, her eyes flicking to Richard across the room. I hope you have a good lawyer. Then she walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding. I found her in the parking lot 20 minutes later. What did you mean by that? Natalie turned and I saw sadness in her eyes. You seem nice, nicer than you deserve to be married to Richard. I don't understand. Richard and I have been having an affair for 8 months. I thought you should know, she said it matter-of-factly, without malice. I ended it last week when I found out he was also sleeping with at least 2 other associates at the firm. He's not a good man, Claire. I felt dizzy. Why are you telling me this? Because Edward knew he was going to remove Richard from the partnership before he died. He had documentation of Richard's affairs, his misuse of firm resources, everything. I helped him compile it. She pulled an envelope from her purse. These are copies. Edward wanted you to have them. He felt guilty that his son turned out to be such a bastard. I took the envelope with shaking hands. Richard's father was going to kick him out. He was going to give Richard a choice, resign quietly or be exposed and disbarred for ethics violations. Some of the women Richard slept with were clients. That's a career ender. Natalie's expression softened. Edward told me he wished he'd protected you better. He knew Richard was controlling, but he didn't realize how bad it was until recently. He wanted me to make sure you got this information after he was gone. Why after? Because Richard is Edward's son. Even disappointed in him, Edward couldn't destroy him himself, but he could give you the tools to protect yourself. She left, and I stood in the parking lot holding an envelope that contained my husband's entire career in ruin. I didn't open it right away. I went home, made dinner, smiled at Richard. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened the envelope in the bathroom. It was all there: hotel receipts going back 3 years, credit card statements showing charges at jewelry stores for pieces I'd never received, text messages with multiple women, photos, emails. And the worst part, client names. Richard had slept with at least 4 clients during their divorce proceedings. That was a massive ethics violation, potentially illegal, definitely disbarable. Edward had compiled a case that would end Richard's career permanently. I sat on the bathroom floor, reading through page after page of my husband's betrayals, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Power. The next morning, I called Patricia from the library. I need to see you, today if possible. We met at the same coffee shop. I showed her everything. She went through the documents methodically, her expression getting sharper with each page. This is nuclear, she said finally. With this, we don't just challenge the prenup, we annihilate it. Adultery, ethics violations, misuse of firm resources. He'd be lucky to keep his law license, let alone his assets. What would I get? Everything: the house, the accounts, the inheritance from his father, alimony. He'd be the one left with nothing. She looked at me seriously. But you need to understand, he'll fight this with everything he has. It will get ugly. I don't care anymore. Good, then let's burn his world down. We spent the next 3 weeks building an airtight case. Patricia brought in a forensic accountant who found even more discrepancies. Richard had been hiding money in offshore accounts, likely planning his own exit strategy at some point. I documented everything about our marriage: the financial control, the isolation from friends and family, the subtle and not-so-subtle put-downs. Patricia had me see a therapist who specialized in emotional abuse, who documented my testimony about the patterns of behavior. I copied every file from Richard's home computer onto flash drives. I photographed every room of our house, every piece of art, every expensive item he'd bought with his money. And I kept building websites. I was up to $67,000 in my secret account now. Even if everything went wrong with the divorce, I had a safety net. Richard never noticed any of it. He was too busy consolidating his power at the firm, too busy with his affairs, too busy enjoying his inheritance. I served him papers on a Thursday morning. He'd just come downstairs for breakfast, wearing the suit I'd picked up from the dry cleaner, about to eat the omelet I'd made him. The process server knocked on the door at 7:45 a.m. Richard answered it, irritated at the interruption. I watched from the kitchen as Richard was handed the envelope, watched him sign for it, confused, watched him open it and start reading. His face went white. What the fuck is this? He turned to me, the papers shaking in his hand. Claire, what the fuck is this? Divorce papers, I said calmly, and a lawsuit for asset division, alimony and damages related to financial abuse and emotional distress. You can't, we have a prenup. The prenup is void if you committed adultery, which you did, extensively, with at least 8 women that I can prove, including 4 clients. I took a sip of my coffee. You're also being reported to the state bar for ethics violations. That part's not me. That's coming from inside your own firm. Apparently, Edward left very detailed documentation. Richard's face went from white to red. You fucking bitch. You think you can divorce me? You're nothing without me. You have no money, no skills, no way to survive. You'll be begging me to take you back within a month. Actually, I have $67,000 in my own bank account. I've been running a successful web design business for the past 8 months. I have clients, income, and a growing reputation in my field, all under my maiden name, all completely separate from you. I stood up. Oh, and I'm keeping the house. Patricia thinks we have an excellent case for it, given that I've been the one maintaining it as my place of employment for my business. This is insane. No judge will give you anything. The prenup is ironclad. The prenup was signed under coercive circumstances by a 19-year-old who you systematically isolated and financially abused for 12 years. We have therapist testimony, documentation of your control tactics, and evidence that you've been planning your own exit strategy with hidden offshore accounts. I picked up my purse. I'm staying at a hotel. My lawyer will be in touch about the deposition schedule. Oh, and Richard, you might want to call your lawyer. You're going to need a really good one. I walked out of the house, our house, and got into my car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. But I did it. I drove away. Richard called 47 times in the first 3 hours. I didn't answer. He texted me everything from "we can work this out" to "I'll destroy you in court" to "I love you, please come home." I blocked his number and focused on what came next. The divorce took 8 months. 8 months of depositions and court dates and Richard's lawyer trying every tactic to discredit me. They claimed I'd stolen from Richard by building a business on his time while he supported me. They claimed the offshore accounts were legitimate investment vehicles. They claimed the affairs were my fault for being a cold, distant wife. Patricia destroyed every single argument. The therapist testified about patterns of coercive control. The forensic accountant showed that Richard's offshore accounts violated tax laws and were clearly hidden assets. Natalie and 2 other women testified about Richard's affairs and his abuse of his position at the firm. The state bar opened an investigation. Richard was suspended pending the outcome. And I kept working. I built websites. I took on bigger clients. I raised my rates to $5,000 per project. I rented a small office space. I hired a part-time assistant. My business grew even as my marriage died. The judge's ruling came down on a Tuesday morning. Patricia called me, and I could hear the smile in her voice. We won everything. I got the house. I got 60% of Richard's assets, including part of his inheritance from his father. I got alimony for 6 years, enough time to fully establish my business and financial independence. I got my legal fees covered. Richard got his clothes, his car, and whatever was left after the IRS finished investigating his offshore accounts. The prenup was declared invalid on the grounds of financial duress and bad faith execution. Richard's share of the law firm was being seized to cover his debts and the settlement he'd agreed to with the firm itself over the ethics violations. He was almost certainly going to be disbarred. I sat in Patricia's office reading the ruling and I started crying. Not sad tears, relief tears. Exhausted, overwhelming, grateful tears. You did this, Patricia said. You built yourself a life raft and then you sailed away from the sinking ship. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. It would have been harder, but you would have found a way. She leaned back in her chair. So what's next for Claire Hoffman? I'd been thinking about that. I want to expand the business, hire more staff, maybe start teaching web design to other women who need skills and income. Women like you were. Exactly like I was. I moved back into the house, my house now, a week later. It felt different knowing it belonged to me. I turned Richard's home office into my office, put up my degrees from the online courses I'd completed, hung my client testimonials on the wall. I was sitting at my new desk when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Claire Morrison, a man's voice, unfamiliar. Claire Hoffman, I corrected. I'd changed my name back immediately after the divorce finalized. Right, sorry, my name is David Chen. I'm a venture capitalist, and I've been seeing your work pop up in my network. The websites you've built for Patricia Gomez and several other small businesses in the area. They're impressive. Thank you. I'm wondering if you've ever considered scaling up your business. You clearly have talent, and there's a massive market for affordable, quality web design for small and medium businesses. With the right funding and infrastructure, you could build something significant. I sat up straighter. I'm listening. David explained his proposal. He wanted to invest $500,000 in my business in exchange for 25% equity. The money would go toward hiring designers and developers, renting proper office space, building a sales and marketing team. I think you could be doing $5 million in annual revenue within 3 years, he said, but you'd need to commit to it fully. This couldn't be a side hustle anymore. It's already not a side hustle. This is my career. Good, then let's talk specifics. We met twice over the following 2 weeks. David introduced me to his partners. They asked hard questions about my business plan, my vision, my capacity to scale. I answered every question confidently, backed up by the research I'd been doing at night, the projections I'd been building. They offered the deal. I negotiated them down to 20% equity. We signed papers in early June, exactly 1 year after I'd served Richard divorce papers. I rented office space in a converted warehouse downtown. I hired 3 designers and 2 developers. I brought on a salesperson and a project manager. I created training programs for each role. And I started a side program, free web design training for women escaping financial abuse. 2 evenings a week, I taught basic HTML, CSS, and design principles to women who needed skills and income and a way out. Patricia referred most of them. Some came from domestic violence shelters. Some found me through the online forums I'd started frequenting during my own escape. I taught them everything I'd taught myself, and I watched them transform the same way I had, from scared and uncertain to skilled and confident. The business exploded. Within 6 months, we had 40 clients. Within a year, we had 75. We were bringing in $3 million in annual revenue. I hired more staff, expanded the office, started offering additional services beyond just web design. I was featured in the local business journal. Local entrepreneur builds million-dollar business from scratch. The article mentioned that I'd started the business while going through a difficult divorce, that I'd taught myself web design through free online resources. It didn't mention Richard by name, but anyone who knew us would know who they were talking about. My mother called after the article came out. We'd been estranged for years. She'd sided with Richard during the divorce, told me I was being ungrateful and foolish. "I saw your article," she said. "I didn't know you were doing so well." "You didn't ask." "I'm sorry about that. I was wrong about Richard. Your Aunt Linda told me what he did, the affairs and everything. I should have supported you." "Yes, you should have." Silence on the line. Then, "Could we have lunch? I'd like to try to rebuild our relationship." I thought about it. Some part of me wanted to say no, to cut her off the way she'd cut me off. But I was tired of burning bridges. I'd spent too much energy escaping Richard to waste more energy on grudges. "Okay, lunch, but we start fresh. No lectures about how I should have tried harder to save my marriage." "Deal." We met the following week. It was awkward at first, stilted, but my mother listened when I told her about the business, about the training program for other women. She apologized genuinely for not believing me about Richard's abuse. "I thought abuse had to be physical," she said. "I didn't understand that what he was doing to you was just as damaging." Most people don't understand that. That's why I started the training program. These women need skills, but they also need to see that someone escaped and survived and thrived. "You're doing important work." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a start. I ran into Richard 18 months after the divorce finalized. I was at a coffee shop near my office, reviewing contracts on my laptop. He walked in looking like a different person, thinner, older, wearing a suit that wasn't tailored. He saw me and froze. For a moment I thought he'd leave. Instead, he walked over. "Claire." "Richard," I didn't close my laptop or invite him to sit. "You look good and successful." "I am successful. I have a multi-million-dollar business and 12 employees." He flinched. "I heard about that, saw the article." "Good for you." "I'm working as a consultant now, legal consulting for small firms. The disbarment stuck, so I can't practice, but I can still use my knowledge." He shifted his weight. "I'm making about $60,000 a year." I did the math in my head. That was less than I paid my senior designers. "I'm sorry things didn't work out for you," I said, and I meant it. Not sorry enough to feel guilty, but sorry the way you're sorry when anyone's life falls apart, even if they brought it on themselves. "I was wrong about you," Richard said suddenly. "You're not nothing without me. You're better without me." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a man who'd built his entire identity on being superior to his wife. And when that wife turned out to be extraordinary, his whole sense of self had collapsed. "Yes," I said simply, "I am better without you." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "I wanted to hate you for destroying my career. I tried to, but the truth is I destroyed it myself. The affairs, the ethics violations, the hidden accounts, that was all me. You just refused to go down with the ship." I spent 12 years drowning, Richard. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life underwater. "I know," he looked down. "I'm sorry, for what it's worth. I'm sorry for making you feel worthless when you were never anything but extraordinary." It was the first real apology he'd ever given me. It didn't fix anything or change the past, but it was something. "Thank you for saying that," I said. I hope you figure out your life. I hope you keep conquering yours." He left and I went back to my laptop. The interaction didn't hurt the way I thought it would. I didn't feel angry or vindicated or sad. I just felt neutral. He was a person I used to know who'd hurt me badly, and now he was just a person I used to know. That was growth. 3 years after the divorce, my business hit $10 million in annual revenue. I'd expanded to 3 cities and had 40 employees. The training program had graduated 200 women, and 85% of them had found employment in tech or started their own businesses. I'd bought a smaller house than the one Richard and I had shared. I didn't need that much space, and honestly it held too many bad memories. My new place was modern and bright and completely mine. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, no one else's approval needed. I started dating casually at first, then more seriously. His name was Marcus, he was a teacher, and he thought it was amazing that I'd built a business from nothing. He never once made me feel like I needed to be smaller to make him feel bigger. On our 6-month anniversary, we were having dinner at my place when he said, "Can I ask you something about your ex-husband?" "Sure. Do you think you could have built all this if you'd stayed with him?" I thought about it honestly. No, he would have sabotaged it at every turn. He needed me to fail so he could feel successful. That's what I thought. It's just you talk about him like he was this obstacle you overcame. But I wonder if you realize how extraordinary you are independent of him. You didn't succeed despite him. You succeeded because you're brilliant and driven and talented. He was just in the way. I felt tears prick my eyes. I think I'm still learning that. Well, I already know it. You're the most capable person I've ever met. He took my hand, and I feel incredibly lucky that you let me be part of your life. That's when I knew I'd really healed. Not because I'd built a successful business or won the divorce or proved Richard wrong, but because I could accept love from someone who saw me clearly and valued me honestly. 5 years after Richard told me I was nothing without him, I was invited to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. The topic was building success from nothing, how to start a business with no resources. I stood on that stage in front of 500 women and told my story. Not all of it, I kept some details private. But I told them about being financially controlled, about teaching myself web design at the library, about building a business in secret while planning my escape. I told them about being terrified and doing it anyway. My ex-husband told me I was nothing without him, I said. He told me I had no skills, no education, no value, and for a long time I believed him. But here's what I learned. When someone tells you you're nothing, they're really revealing their own fear. They're afraid that you're actually everything, and the moment you realize that, you won't need them anymore. The applause was deafening. After the speech, dozens of women lined up to talk to me. They told me their own stories of financial abuse, of controlling partners, of feeling trapped. They asked how I found the courage to leave. I didn't find courage, I told them. I found anger, and I channeled that anger into learning skills, making plans, and building something he couldn't touch. Courage came later. At first, it was just survival. One woman, probably in her 50s, grabbed my hand. I've been married for 30 years. I have no money of my own, no job history, nothing. Is it too late for me? It's never too late. I started learning web design at 34 with no tech background. You can start learning whatever calls to you at 54 or 64 or 74. The only thing that matters is that you start. She cried and hugged me, and I thought about how many women were out there right now, sitting in houses that weren't theirs, living lives that weren't theirs, married to men who made them feel like nothing. I couldn't save all of them, but I could show them it was possible to save themselves. The business continued to grow. By year 7, we were doing $25 million in revenue. I'd taken on a CEO to handle day-to-day operations while I focused on strategy and the training program. The training program had become its own nonprofit, the Claire Hoffman Foundation for Women's Economic Independence. We offered free courses in web design, coding, digital marketing, and business basics. We provided childcare during classes. We helped women open bank accounts and build credit. We helped them build life rafts. I was at the foundation's office one afternoon when I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Usually I didn't answer those, but something made me pick up. "Is this Claire Hoffman?" A young woman's voice, shaky. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Ashley Morrison. I'm Richard Morrison's daughter." I sat down heavily. Richard and I had never had children, another thing he'd controlled, always saying, "not yet," whenever I brought it up. I'd never known he had a daughter. I didn't know Richard had children, I said carefully. He doesn't know he has me either. My mom had an affair with him about 20 years ago. She never told him she got pregnant. Ashley's voice cracked. She told me who my father was a few months ago. She's sick, and she wanted me to know. I've been trying to decide whether to reach out to him. Why are you calling me? Because I researched him first. I found the news articles about the disbarment, about your divorce. I read about your business and your foundation, and I thought maybe you could tell me what kind of man he is, whether I should reach out or just leave it alone. I closed my eyes, thinking about what to say. I could tell her Richard was a narcissist who destroyed everything he touched. I could warn her off. I could protect her from the disappointment of meeting him. But that wasn't my choice to make. Richard is complicated, I said finally. He's capable of charm and generosity, but also cruelty and control. He hurt me badly, but he's also a human being who's suffered consequences for his actions. Whether you reach out is entirely up to you, but if you do, go in with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. Do you hate him? No, I did for a while, but mostly I just feel nothing. He's part of my past, and I've built a good life separate from him. He told me I was nothing, Ashley said quietly. When I finally called him yesterday and told him who I was, he said I was probably lying, trying to scam him for money he doesn't have. He said even if I was his daughter, he wanted nothing to do with me, that I was nothing to him. My heart broke for this girl. Ashley, I'm so sorry. That's his pattern, making people feel worthless so he can feel powerful. It's not about you. It's never been about the people he says it to. It's about his own emptiness. How did you get past it? I proved him wrong. I built a life that made me proud, and eventually his opinion stopped mattering. I paused. How old are you? 22. I just graduated college. What did you study? Computer science. I'm good at coding, but I don't know anything about business or how to actually get clients. I smiled. What if I told you I run a foundation that teaches exactly those skills, and we're always looking for teaching assistants who know coding? Are you serious? Completely. Email me your resume. If you're interested in helping other women learn tech skills while you figure out your own path, I'd love to talk to you about a position. Why would you help me? I'm his daughter. You're not responsible for who your father is, and honestly, helping you would be the best possible revenge, turning his rejection of you into an opportunity that helps you thrive. I meant it. Email me. Let's talk. She did. I hired her as a teaching assistant 2 weeks later. She was brilliant with code and patient with students. The women in the program loved her. Over coffee one day, she said, "Thank you for giving me a chance. I didn't think anyone connected to Richard would want anything to do with me." You're not connected to Richard. You're connected to yourself. He's just an irrelevant biological fact. I stirred my coffee. Build your life around what you value, not in reaction to him. That's how you win. Is that what you did? Eventually, at first I built everything in reaction to him. Proving him wrong was my entire motivation. But as I healed, I started building because I loved the work and wanted to help people. The success stopped being about him and started being about me. I want that, Ashley said. I want to stop thinking about him at all. You will, it just takes time. 10 years after Richard told me I was nothing without him, I stood in front of my company's new headquarters, a beautiful modern building in the heart of downtown. The sign read, Hoffman Digital Solutions, in sleek chrome letters. We had 200 employees across 6 cities. We were doing $50 million in annual revenue. The foundation had helped over 2,000 women gain skills and independence. I'd been featured in Forbes, Inc., and Entrepreneur magazine. I'd been invited to speak at conferences around the country. I'd become someone Richard could never have imagined I'd be. But the best part wasn't the success or the money or the recognition. The best part was that I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy in a way I'd never been during my marriage. I had work I loved, people I cared about, a partner who respected me, a life built entirely on my own terms. Richard had been wrong about everything. I wasn't nothing without him. I was everything. My phone rang, Marcus, calling during his lunch break. Hey, beautiful, how's your day? Good, I'm standing in front of the new building. It's surreal. You earned every inch of it. I'm proud of you. Thank you, I smiled. I'm proud of me too. As you should be. Listen, I have to get back to class, but I wanted to remind you we have dinner with my parents tonight. Can you still make it? Wouldn't miss it. See you at home. I hung up and took one more look at the building, my company, my life. And I thought about 19-year-old Claire, who'd married a man 10 years older because he made her feel special, who'd given up college and career and independence because she thought love meant sacrifice. I wished I could go back and tell her what I knew now. Real love doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't require you to give up your dreams or your potential or yourself. Real love celebrates who you are and who you're becoming. And sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding the right person. It's about finding yourself. I walked into my building, greeted my employees by name, headed to my office on the top floor. I had work to do, lives to change, a business to run. Richard had told me I was nothing without him. Turned out I was everything without him. And that was the best revenge of all.